Join us with me, Isaac Daxe Wakalanga, on the Situation Corner as we talk matters youth at the Central Youth Parliament. Now, I'll be joined by the Right Honourable Speaker of the Central Youth Parliament, Miss Nalubyayi Zahara. I'll also be joined by the Honourable Speaker at the Central Youth Parliament, Mr. Festo Kato. You are most welcome to yet another episode of the Situation Corner, where we talk civic education, engagement, policy making, and accountability. I am joined by the National Youth Parliament leaders in the Central Region. And before I go ahead, you're going to allow me to ask them to introduce themselves to the audience. Please, the gentleman on my left.
Yeah, I am Festo Kato, a National Youth Parliament representative for Masaka.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to have you on the show.
Thank you so much.
Yes, the lady on your left.
I'm Nalubyayi Zahara, the Speaker, Central Youth Parliament.
Okay, good to have you on the show.
You.
Yes, so let's get right into the details of youth leadership at the Central Region. Number one, what are some of the roles? Let me start with you, Madam Zahara. The roles of leadership at the National Youth Parliament.
The rules are like the rules for the Central Parliament, the Parliament of Uganda. Like, you don't have to clap, you have to stamp your feet. Yes, we have the same procedure. Yes.
Okay, that's it? Okay, now let's get right into some of the motions that you've done previously, because I know the recent sitting was the third sitting at the Central Region Youth Parliament. Give us a highlight of some of the motions that you've been able to discuss in the past, in the second sitting, maybe in the first sitting, for the viewers out there, because I know most of the youth are not really informed about these parliaments, and yet they are really pivotal in terms of making policies which are later on moved to the national level, which really affect the youth in every way.
I'll only remember a few from this third sitting, because I wasn't actively, I didn't actively participate in the first and the second.
Okay.
But generally, the motions we've been having for this particular sittings have been coming from a background of urgency. They show that these are policies that need to be handled, and we also had the youth unemployment, the rise we are having in the country.
Yes.
So the conversations we are having are: should we have to rely on government, or we can have to push for what we can possibly do where we are, and if we can have things we can do, how can we do it? Those are the conversations we've been having in this third round. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Now let me move to the speaker. Let's talk current policies now. Let's move to the third sitting. Take us through some of the motions that you discussed in that sitting.
Actually, in the third sitting, we discussed two motions. One was touching the skill development in youth. It was urging the Parliament of Uganda to come up with something to do with skill development in the youth. And the second one was about raising prices of commodities.
The rising prices.
Yes, the rising prices. And we're urging the government to come up with something at least to help the youth. Yes.
Now let's get right there, deep into those two motions. Firstly, let's start with the rising prices of commodities, because I know that's current affairs. What were you fronting? What were your views? What were you really asking the government to engage in to ensure that the youth are able to be helped from the rising prices?
The third sitting came up with resolutions. It urged the government to reduce on the taxes. The taxes on internet, because some of the youth are doing business online, and they urge for allocation of funds to the agricultural department, agriculture sector. Because if agriculture is the backbone of Uganda, and it's not allocated to the money is not allocated to agriculture, the youth won't be able to get something to do. Yes, and the youth urged for fair electoral reforms, because the parliament has been at the center stage of increasing the nomination fees, and for them they already in the seats. They have a lot of money, so they raised the bar in spending and funding the elections. Yeah.
So again, sticking with you, let's move to the second motion, which was skills development amongst the youth. What did you really front in the debate, in depth?
Yes, we asked each other to press the government so that it accommodates the youth with skills development, both youth in schools and outside schools. And we urged for the accessibility of vocational infrastructure, because we find it that the formal education provides more of the theory that doesn't help. And we urge the government to have partnership with at least organizations or companies that are willing to invest and empower the youth. And the youth and the women, because these are the people who are having macro and small enterprises, and they were affected by whatever COVID-19. Yes.
Okay. Now moving to Mr. Festo.
Yes,
again, sticking with the motion on the rising prices of commodities, reducing on the prices. Recently, the Minister of Finance, the Honorable Matia Kasaija, made a statement in which he said that the government won't be able to tamper with prices of commodities in any way, saying that that would really push the economy into gutters where the government won't be able to move out. What's your view on that?
It was highlighted that most of the youths feel like it is a political move, especially for Uganda, given what we've seen other countries do as regards combating the rising prices for the commodities. And it is a challenge we have to deal with as a generation, because now the youths feel like the government is not having their interests at the heart. So we are trying to look at, okay, what can we do then? If these prices are continuously rising, the conversations were around what should the government do in line with looking at what the youths now
in terms
think.
of macro and micro fiscal policies, is it really ideal to tamper with prices of commodities? Is it really ideal?
It does not make sense, obviously, for some people.
So the government is right not to make such a statement?
Because now we are looking at it as something that is affecting the global market. But at least we've seen some countries do something about it, and this is why the youths in Uganda feel like our government is not doing enough.
For example, what have other governments done?
Look at what Kenya did with trying to increase the wages for their public service servants.
But the government did increase the wages of science teachers.
Now,
that's a way of injecting money into the economy. So
we should look at the rationale of how many science teachers we are having versus the arts teachers in the country, and also the contribution for the arts teachers. Because she just talked about skilling. Most of the skills as Africans cut across just art. So when you're focusing on sciences, we are now going to be having a generation that is more anchored towards the government. Now the anchor will limit us from thinking creatively and effectively to reach an extent where now we hate amongst ourselves. Because if you are a scientist, Isaac, I'll reach a point where I don't want to feel like I should relate with you, because now you feel like you have more than me. And there's some sense of disrespect amongst ourselves, and yet we can have to balance both and coexist with each other. It is a rule of nature, but that natural law should be able to cut across the board, and then we will be able to learn to even relate with what the government is going through and understand that the government is only trying to do what they find priority to do for the population.
For the population.
Yes, so that at least we don't have to think on an individual basis and feel like the government should
which I believe usually when they prioritize, it's for the benefit of the population.
Of course, but the population does not understand it to that extent. Yeah,
exactly. I think that's where now you, the leaders, have to come in to help the population, because you're representative of the youth at the local level.
You can only help if there's something that is showing in the trenches. Because, say for example, you are in a tunnel and you cannot see.
So what you're trying to say, the government hasn't done anything for you guys to speak
We are
about?
not seeing any beam of light at the end of the tunnel.
Nothing, no beam at all?
it is not there, because we are, for example, today I was moving around one of the Shell petrol stations, and the fuel is around 6,800.
Okay.
And this is something that has been happening on a daily basis. At least
okay.
either 50 shillings or 100 shillings is adding on to the fuel. And when the fuel rises, the other commodities follow. Yeah.
Okay. Let's hope the government will do something about it, because I know they're trying to do something.
It's a prayer for the youth.
Now let's move to skills development. So, another motion that you touched in the third sitting. Recently, the government was able to pass a budget of about 1 trillion shillings towards the parish development model in a way of getting money up to the local level, which I believe the youth should be engaged in one way or another.
Yes.
You as leaders at the youth level, how have you been able to engage youth into these activities that the government is trying to put in place to help the youth move into the economic and the money economy?
For the record again, we are having youth pressure groups coming up that are pushing for accountability. The PPDA has also designed an app that can help members of these groups
What's the
to
PPDA
report.
for the viewer out there?
That is public procurement and
yes.
disposal authority in the country.
Yes.
So there is an app that is available now that members of these groups can access. But they are registered members. They should be known members that try to follow up activities that the government is funding, so that at least there is progress recorded, and also these youths can at least understand that there is impact being created on ground. So as far as skilling is concerned, there should be strategy on how we are going to account for the money that was given out, so that at least we shall know which people spent wrongly and then which other people. Then we should also have to follow up on which people are gaining from this. Our mainstream media is not giving us enough of stories for the people that are breaking out of poverty, people that are surviving the ghetto. We are not having enough of these stories, and probably that is what we need. We need to be on the ground, follow up on this money, because if they are saying, if it is said that the money is going to be helping the list of the people that are battling with poverty, how do we make sure that these people are not going to just spend this money on food, but then try to use the money to get more money? Okay,
thank you very much. Allow me move to Ms. Zahara. There is a talk within the pipeline of saying that the youth are not supposed to be engaged in leadership aspects. It's sort of a cultural thing within Africa and within Uganda. Leadership is usually a preserve of the old and the elderly. You as youth, do you really think you're ready to take on the mantle and be engaged in leadership? For example, recently the president was addressing a section of youth within the NRM, and he said that youth don't have ideology. They have nothing to front to the country. They don't have anything. All they're talking about is, we need to leave, the old have to leave, the old have to live. That's the president saying. Do you really think the youth are up to the task to be engaged in the national policy making and implementation of these decisions?
Yeah, the youth are very ready. Actually, some of the reforms in the country have been pressurized by the youth.
For example?
That OTT tax, yes. If the youth didn't go to hold demonstrations, because if you don't give them a clear platform to express themselves, of course they will use other channels. So that's the way they could express their voice. Yes.
Okay, that's good to know. Now let's talk about what the youth can do to make sure that their voices are heard, because the elderly are saying, you're not yet there. You're saying you are there. What are some of the ways that you believe the youth can continue to make engagements? How are we supposed to do that? So you give your opinion then, Mr. Festo Kato.
The youth have already found platforms. Organizations like Faraja have created a platform, but youth have engaged in politics. And that's where the bad heart comes in. Youth are coming in to engage in politics, in leadership, and the elderly are blocking our ways.
Mr. Festo, please.
Thank you, Isaac. That is a very sensitive topic. So what we are praying for the elders to do for us is, one, to allow us take shape. even if we are prone to making some mistakes, these are the mistakes that are going to help us learn, master the art of leadership. The other point is they need to understand the aspect of who has brought us. If as the youths are being selfish to an extent, we are being selfish because someone taught us to be selfish. Yeah.
Okay. To the viewers who are watching us, we are with leaders from the Central Sub-Region Youth Parliament, and today we are talking matters youth. I believe the government has done a lot to engage the youth, but I also believe there's still room to improve. Okay, thank you for joining us on today's episode of The Situation Corner. Yeah, now feel free to engage with us on all our social media platforms, where we'll be keeping talking about matters concerning the youth.